That's 5 sacks for this defense in each of the last 3 games, and it's blocked! Up into the air and spinning inside the 10, picked up and a touchdown! Hufanga got the return for the touchdown after the block by Jordan Willis, and the special teams that's been a problem for Green Bay all season long breaks down here with under 5 to go, and we're an extra point away from a tie game. Wow.
Now, back to the morning roast with Bonte and Shasky.
What a call by Joe Buck back then on Fox Sports in that divisional round game against the Green Bay Packers. They've been the greatest special teams play in the history of the 49ers, especially in the postseason, as the Niners advanced to the NFC title game that year. Of course, lost to the L.A. Rams. The next year, they lose to the Philadelphia Eagles. But tonight on the call, as he's jumped over to Monday Night Football, he's done a great job. Aikman and Buck, they are big time. They're the best in the business. Joe Buck joins a morning roast right here on 95.7 The Game. Joe, good morning to you. Joe Shasky, the Butcher, and Bonte Hill. And I guess the first question is, what do your kids want for breakfast? I hear they're screaming for is it eggs? Is it bacon? Do they want it crispy?
Oh, my God. You know, you bring your kids to work, and it's just such a great idea until you put it in action. And then you got to deal with 5-year-old twin boys who will make their little television debut tonight on a skit that we shot with the Vikings mascot.
Oh,
However,
that's cool.
They're clawing at me, and it's all good. I've got time for you. No problem. And thank you for getting the note that I wanted that highlight set to Hall & Oates music.
It's one of our favorite sounds of all time. Hufanga! The way you say it, the way like everybody was sitting at home, those that didn't go to Green Bay, and it was one of the greatest special teams plays in 49er history, and it's just a classic call from you, and I think you kind of encapsulated all Niner fans' feelings at that point.
Well, that's good to hear. Because all I do is walk around San Francisco, and it's like, you hate the Giants, you hate the 49ers. But yeah, no, that was one of those that catches your attention on a freezing night in Green Bay and changes the entire complexion of a game. So, you know, it's fun to be there for those moments. It's fun to hear that back because I haven't heard that since I walked out of the booth that night. So that was cool. Thank you.
That was cool. And believe it or not, we're 2 guys in San Francisco who were born and raised here who don't necesserally hate you, Joe. I actually miss you on the baseball stuff.
We do.
I really do, man. And we'll get to that in a second.
Fans miss me now. All those World Series wins. All the you hate the Giants. Where am I now?
You're on Monday Night Football.
You're on Monday Night Football. The Giants are nowhere to be found right now.
Right. Yeah.
Nowhere to be found. But it is Monday Night Football. And you got this 49ers team led by Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan. And you may see Christian McCaffrey. You may not see him tonight. We know you're not seeing Deebo Samuel. And I know a few weeks ago, and we'll start here with the grand scheme of things in the NFC. You're on Monday Night Football when the Eagles and Bucks played. You mentioned how the Eagles, in your opinion, were the better team at that point. And I actually agree with you as I wear my 49er hat because to beat the top dog, you have to beat them. And when I look at both sides of the line of scrimmage, that's the difference to me, Joe. When I watched last week in Cleveland, the Niners, and then I watched Philadelphia last night, it's the trenches. They're just so good up front on the offensive and defensive side of the football, especially at those lines, that I'm looking at the Niners tonight. If they can't go without Trent Williams, that's a tall task for this offensive line against the Vikings front.
Yeah, I mean, he's 30. He's a Hall of Famer, and he's 35 and can't do it all. And, yeah, they're not likely to have him tonight. I feel good about Christian McCaffrey making the start, and obviously Debo's out. So, I think they're clearly the 2 best, and I think it's interesting when they go head-to-head, who comes out on top. But you're right. The offensive line is very, I don't want to say underrated for Philly, because I think most people believe that's if not the best, top 2 offensive lines in the game, and that's a big advantage, especially when you know it's 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. You know what they're going to do, and you can't stop it because you've got a quarterback that can squat 600 pounds, and you've got, Jason Kelsey in the middle of that thing, anchoring it and just moving people off the ball. So it's a big advantage. But, I work with a guy in Troy Aikman who believes if he were owning a team or putting one together, the first decision he would make would be to hire Kyle Shanahan if he could. And I think, he has such admiration for the way they play, the physical nature of their game, that, they can out-physical you too, and they can do it a number of different ways. And I think the record of teams that have just played the 49ers the next week without a bye over the last couple of years is atrocious, because you just get beat up when you play San Francisco. So I think they're clearly the two best in the NFC, and you can look at it any number of ways and say who's better. But at some point they're going to play, and we're going to find out. So, those are the two teams that I look at right now, that if they're not in the NFC Championship game, it means that one of the two or both suffered bad injuries.
Joe, as we go back in the Way Time Machine, NFC Championship game, you and Troy Aikman are sitting there, and you're talking about Jimmy Garoppolo versus Matt Stafford. And I've watched it. Bonte, how many times have you brought it up?
Yeah, I brought it up over and over. You guys are so on point at NFC title game, because you asked Troy, what do you need to do in the big game? What is something and Troy goes, well, when I look at the big games, it's who doesn't make the mistake. Who's not going to make the mistake? And I remember when about 5 minutes ago, it was tied at 17. We were at the game itself, but going back and watching it because we have to, because it's our job. Troy goes, well, the Rams have done a good job in the run against the Niners run game, and I'm afraid it's going to come down to Jimmy Garoppolo. I was like, wow, how did Troy become so straightforward with his analysis there? And I thought you guys were on point with that.
Well, you were great there, and I guess that brings me to now Brock Purdy, because he says he loves, Shanahan. What do you guys think of Brock Purdy thus far? He's been outstanding, and then he had a really bad game last week. I'm interested to see what he looks like tonight. What do you guys think of Brock Purdy?
I'm sure if you dig through the history books, Montana had a bad game. Steve Young had a bad game. Go down the list. They've all had bad games. I think he's smart. I think he's exactly what Kyle wants. I think the ball comes out on time. I think he's a leader. I think they respect him. I think they fell into it, where they went crazy and traded up and got Trey Lance, and he's now a Dallas Cowboy. I think they fell into this whole Mr. Irrelevant thing, and either way, they come out of there with their quarterback. So I know from talking to Kyle yesterday that he's over the moon with him. I think he's able to do what he's always wanted to do with the offense with Brock Purdy. I think he had to adjust with Jimmy, and they did some great things. They won a ton of games.
Right.
But I think he's able to do what he wants to do with their offense with Brock. And we finally got a chance to talk to him. We did a Monday night game last year, and he came in the game, and I talked about how Shanahan had told us that he's got big, thick legs, and they call him Baby Bosa around the team. And Brock was laughing about it yesterday, saying they're still calling him that because we brought it up on television. So he's kind of he's a unique story, but the bottom line is the guy can play quarterback. And I think combined with Kyle and their schemes and the weapons they have and their physical nature, they're a force. And so I think it's been a nice change for Kyle.
Well, there's been a lot of, I guess, pundits, I'm not saying you are one of them, that want to see what he can do in a different system or see what he can do when he doesn't have all his playmakers. What do you make of that? Because they're not going to have Deebo Samuel tonight. I don't know. CMC feels like a game-time decision.
Well, Joe just mentioned he's going to go. So
Trent Williams feels like a game-time decision. Like, do you need to see Brock Purdy without all of his weapons?
Well, we saw it. We saw it to a degree last week in Cleveland, and it was just not a good game. And I think, we'll learn more. The body of work is what he's making his 12th regular season start tonight, so the body of work is small. But I think you have to give him credit for what he's been able to do to this point. I don't know what tonight's going to look like. I think they're really hopeful that McCaffrey does play, and I think they feel decent about that. But the other two guys, the star left tackle and Deebo's not going to be in there. And it just feels like, there's more on Brock Purdy tonight. So we'll see. I don't. That's the beauty of this thing. We don't know what it's going to be like until they line it up and kick it off. But I'd sure bet on him at this point because I think he's shown, 95% brilliance running this system that's put together by a guy who's been at it a long time, a guy who grew up in it, and somebody who can out scheme a defense.
Joe Buck, right here on the Morning Roast on 95.7 The Game, the voice of Monday Night Football. He's been doing it for a long, long time. One of the best, if not the best, in the business when it comes to calling the game, whether it's football or baseball or heck, even golf now. He's ventured into the greens, Shasky. When you think about John Lynch here, and he's helped alongside Adam Peters build a bully, and they said brick by brick when they joined the 49ers in 2017, and they've got all these guys like Fred Warner from the middle rounds, George Kittle from the middle rounds, a lot of studs here. When you were at Fox, and I know you guys didn't work directly with each other, he was on a different team than you were, did you have any inkling that John Lynch would leave from Fox to become a GM? Because he was so good in the booth that out here in the Bay Area when he got hired as a GM of the 49ers, we were all surprised. Were you surprised?
Totally. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. You know, the story about being in a production meeting with Kyle during their time in Atlanta. And, you know, I don't know if it was said overtly or if it was a little meeting after the meeting, but like, hey, I'm going to get an opportunity with San Francisco, or would you be interested in being the general manager? And for however it came to be, it's just a great combination, and two guys that seem to see things the same way. And, you know, you do get to know these guys pretty well in production meetings. And I do think there's value in that. And I don't know how well they knew each other before their time spent talking about the Atlanta Falcons and John talking about a broadcast coming up, but it sure has worked great. And, you know, they missed him at Fox. I think had he stayed there once Troy and I left, you know, he may be doing the top game at Fox now. Instead, he's the general manager of the 49ers. So it's funny how life works. It's that whole sliding doors thing, and the door slid open, and Lynch ends up the GM, and I think everybody who's a 49er fan should be happy that's the way it worked out.
Oh, we're thrilled. I mean, he's just been an absolute winner and has stacked this team, and they've been more relevant than they have in years. And so, yeah, we love the guy. What do you make of the fascination, the relationship here between Kirk Cousins and Kyle Shanahan? Because it feels like at every opportunity, the Niners have been linked to Kirk Cousins, and any opportunity to talk about him at a podium, Kyle keeps bringing him up. Did you guys actually ask either one of those two about the other in your pre-production meetings?
Yeah, we sure did. It's genuine. I think we know that. The first 2 years that Kirk was in the league, he had not only Kyle, but Mike Shanahan and all those other great coaches like McVay and LaFleur. And there's one more that's escaping my mind right now, but it's incredible the staff that was there with Washington, and they got 2 years together. And if you go back, and Kyle's been very revealing about, you know, Kirk was Kyle's guy going into that draft, and their plan was to draft two quarterbacks no matter what. And Mike, you know, went to Kyle and said, we're going to take Cousins. And Kyle was excited. And I think there's something about the cerebral nature of Kirk and his ability, I think mechanically speaking, with his footwork and the ball coming out and the way he looks at a defense and the way he operates an offense, that is right up Kyle's alley. But they never matched up. You know, the wheel of life in the NFL just never turned in a way where they could get hooked up. And whether it was Garoppolo or now Purdy is blocking the way, it doesn't seem like that thing's ever going to happen. So Purdy is his guy, and I think, you know, I think there's a lot of truth to their fondness for one another and their desire to work together again after those first 2 years. But I just don't see it happen. I think that time has come and gone, and it's just one of those. It never worked out. But there's a lot of appreciation and respect between those two when we talk to Kyle about Kirk and vice versa.
Joe, before we get you out of here, I know you got to get the kids fed, and it sounds like they're doing great right now. I know how it is having a baby daughter. When she wants her eggs, she wants it right away. And so I got to whip those.
They're tucked away.
Good deal. Look, you had a lot of iconic calls, whether it was baseball or football, but I do want to end it. These baseball playoffs have been special. We have a vested interest in it because two former Giants managers in the ALCS getting ready for a Game 7. We'll be all locked in on Niners and Vikings, but the Rangers and Astros will be playing in a Game 7 for a trip to the World Series. Philadelphia is doing their thing against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Do you ever watch and just kind of miss it there? Because there's been some iconic plays in this postseason. Do you get the itch at all, or are you saying, you know what? I'm no voice of Monday Night Football, man. Life is good. I don't need baseball anymore. How are you taking in? How are you watching the baseball playoffs this year, Joe?
From a distance, I don't get wrapped up in it like I did. I did baseball for 35 years of my life, and I did 24 World Series, and I'm proud of all that. And I'm excited for Joe Davis, and I'm excited for John to carry on, and I'm happy for them. But yeah, those big moments. I mean, you could make the case that as a broadcaster, when you have a big baseball moment, whether it's a walk-off home run or Bumgarner doing what he did in Kansas City, which was just stunning at the end of that long postseason when they beat the Royals. There's just nothing like it. So yeah, I miss that a little bit, but you got to do a lot to get there.
Right. You
got to do the regular season games. You got to do a Saturday, somewhere in the Midwest that few people are watching, and these moments are awesome, and it's where baseball just shines. And so you're right. I didn't think about that with the two ex-Giant managers, but Boch was the best, and so honest and so real and so open with information. And I would just say that of all the managers I broadcast games for, nobody ran a bullpen like that guy. Mm-hmm. And you see it now. Mm-hmm. You saw it last night. He has a touch, whether it's being a former catcher, just being in tune with his guys. He can run a bullpen like no manager I've ever seen. So it doesn't surprise me that he's gotten the Rangers to a Game 7. We'll see how it goes, but it's really cool because he's one of sports' really good guys.
Joe, 24 World Series appearances. That ties your boy Stan Musial's All-Star appearances. That's incredible. Like 24 World Series. That is crazy. I was just jaw-dropped at that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of it, but I just happened to be at the right place at the right time, like we were talking about with Kirk and Kyle. Mm-hmm. I didn't win a national, I didn't win some national talent search every year to get to do it. I just got to do it and had bosses that believed in me and didn't screw it up, despite Giants fans thinking that I was rooting against them, which I didn't. And I would say play the Travis Ishikawa home run against the Cardinals.
It's a great
and let
call.
me know if you think that guy is rooting either way. But at any rate, I'm proud of what I did. I'm happy to walk away from it and raise two more kids. I've got daughters that are in their 20s, and it's time to be a dad again. And just chasing every event just to say that I'm doing it is not something I'm interested in doing.
Nah, you're doing a great job on Monday Night Football. I think you've grown as a football play-by-play voice. I remember when you first started at Fox back in the day, in the early 90s.
God, I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah. I was 25 and had never done football, let alone TV football, let alone NFL football. So, yeah, I think I've figured some parts of it out. Not all of it, but I've gotten better.
Nah, you and Aikman are best in the business, man. You guys are great. And
Troy
we can't wait for the call.
Amazing.
Yeah, Troy is good. I can't believe we love a cowboy here in the West Coast.
He's so good.
But he is good. He is good. Joe, thanks for all the time. I know you got to feed those kids. We appreciate the time, man. Have a great call today. Really is special, man, to have you on these airwaves.
Well, thank you. Hey, Wyatt and Blake, say bye, guys.
Bye-bye, Wyatt and Blake.
Yeah. We'll see you tonight on TV.
See you on TV.
Yes, you will. All right, see you guys.
Good stuff.
All right, Joe Buck here on the Morning Roast on 95.7 The Game.